flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Grand entrance.
Paul? John Basley, First Ward.
Bill Carlos, Second Ward.
Stefan Krakauer, Fifth Ward.
Ann Shershin, Sixth Ward.
Todd Tancredi, Supervisor.
Alicia Salvatore, Town Clerk.
Jim Nelson, Attorney for the town.
Okay. We've got a number of items for discussion tonight on our Committee of the Whole. So first one up, we might as well get started. I'd like to ask Dan Kohler to come up and talk about the project that is being proposed up on Creek Road.
Mr. Supervisor, my client, I was just in contact with him. He's just running a little bit
Okay.
late, stuck in traffic.
Okay,
So
we can.
If it's okay with you,
Sure,
we can just
we
push
can
this
move
down
on to
to item
two.
and-
Yeah, absolutely, no
Great,
problem.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, item number 2 is potential rezoning for parcels up on Valley Avenue. I'll let Mr. Wilson explain the concept.
Thank you very much. Neil Wilson, Development Director for the town. I guess it was a few months ago, I actually met with Tim Owen, who's here in the audience, regarding property he owns at 297 Violet Avenue. And what he's interested in doing is a 4-unit multifamily dwelling. Right now, there is a dilapidated, very much in need of taking down, what remnant of a single-family house on the property. The purpose of introducing this tonight is to sort of test the waters and see if the board is interested in considering an application for a zone change. What I put together for you are information from the county parcel access database. The 297 Violet Avenue property is about a half acre in size. And immediately north of that is a piece of property that is about a half acre in size, but actually has a 3-unit multifamily dwelling on it. And immediately south of that is the property that's owned by Schmeling Glass. The recommendation would be, if the board is interested in considering a rezoning, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Owen in a minute, I provided to you a copy of the zoning map. And the little hatched areas here that I've crossed out are actually the 3 properties, Schmeling Glass, the 297 property, and the 299 property. And as you can see, the Schmeling Glass actually abuts multifamily zone to the south. So it would really be a matter of extending the zone northward to encompass these 3 properties. It would legalize the 3-family, allow Mr. Owen to go forward, and I think he would actually be eligible only for a 3-family as well. I think he was actually talking with us about four families, but he'd need more acreage. The Schmeling Glass property right now is zoned for R20. It's already a legal non-conforming use. Stretching the RM zone to include it would effectively have no impact at all on their business use of the property and continued business use. Just in terms of sort of placing this, the location is, again, Violet Avenue, 9G. The property across the street is it's actually a portion of the Dutchess Community College property. And then, of course, we have a mobile home park located to the west of that as well. So I'm going to just turn it over.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
On this map, it's got parcel numbers. So could you just give me the last 3 digits of the parcel numbers so I know which ones we're talking about? It doesn't have street numbers on it.
Yeah, actually, the property that we're talking about it's actually the 6-digit number 523128.
Okay.
It's the middle of the 3.
And Schmeling Glass is the 522115?
Yes.
And 535122 is that little
It's
piece
just
out?
some little, I don't know what that is. It's just some little carve out.
And we're talking about rezoning then the 2 north of it? 136
No,
and
the
14?
Schmeling Glass, which is 522115.
Right.
The middle piece, which Mr. Owens, 523128. And then the one immediately north of that, 527136, which is already a 3-family.
Okay, so we're talking about rezoning the Schmeling Glass piece too.
Yes, yes.
So 115, 128, 136.
Right, right. And again, with reference to the zoning map, the Schmeling Glass piece abuts an existing RM zone along its southerly boundary. And so it would really be a matter of extending that northward.
Neil, what's behind it?
It's a mobile home park and actually a portion of the remnant land that the state of New York retained from the former Psych Center.
And right now, on the property Mr. Owen owns is basically a vacant,
It's a vacant lot, right? I took the,
At 128?
oh, you did take the house down?
Okay,
took it down about a month ago.
okay, good, I wasn't aware of that.
Mr. Owen, can you pull the microphone towards you? Although there was a vacant house on it, which I
Yes,
think
it
the building
was.
department was using as a
Yeah,
screensaver,
it was
as
one of our
an example
screensavers,
of what we don't want. So you took that down already. Okay, perfect. All right.
I have a site map that might show better of everything. Let me just pull it up a little closer, please. So you can kind of get a gist here. That's Hudson River Housing, the site board, our property. Right across the street, you have the DOT.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, let me get it a little closer.
Oh, you got to use the microphone, sorry.
So you have New York Hudson River. The back, you got the trailer park, which is really behind the whole. It's really a legal three-family that's next to us, right? Then across the street, obviously, you have the DOT, and then Schmeling Glass right below. So you can see right in the middle of everything where we are.
And this is the one you already tore down?
Yes, I did.
So most of the properties on your side of the road are all single-family homes?
No, Schmeling Glass is right
Oh,
next
Schmeling
door,
Glass.
and then on the other side, there's a three-family.
Right,
And
but
then,
then
and then you go
everything
down to one families, correct?
And then in the other direction are those,
Yeah, they're all multi-families down here. 2, 3 families,
your zoning right now is R20?
correct.
And what were you looking to put in there?
4 family, which I actually, let's see what I got here. This is a 4-family that I built actually 20 years ago in Beacon. You can see I actually took the picture today.
So you build them and retain them, you don't build them and sell them?
No, I retain, correct. And there's a site drawing attached. The site drawing is attached, which actually fits perfect on that particular site.
So this is the kind of building you were looking to build?
Yeah, maintenance free, really, that's how I build, so I don't have to really bother with it later on in life.
And do you own the Schmeling Glass piece?
No, I don't.
So just these two?
He
No,
doesn't own
no, I
those.
only own the one.
You only own the one, but we're going to rezone, the request is to rezone all 3 of these.
The suggestion from staff is if you're going to consider rezoning Mr. Owen's piece, include the one north of it, which would legalize that 3-family.
It's already a 3-family,
Already, yeah.
not zoned.
Okay, but what
But
would
why
be the reason to change Schmeling Glass?
It just happens to be the intervening property, and otherwise you would end up with a multifamily piece, an R20 piece, and a very small multifamily piece. In terms of the business operation, Schmeling Glass is already a legal non-conforming use, so changing it to an RM from an R20 has absolutely no effect on their business use of the property.
Or any of their tax
No, right, it doesn't, has no effect
So it
on
has no impact at all?
Right, they remain whatever they are, right.
And Neil, would you be changing that tiny little piece too, in case somebody wants to?
I gotta find out what that is. I don't know what that is.
Is that even big enough to be a buildable lot?
No.
Might be another
It
somebody
actually,
to suck it in later on.
it actually looks like it's something,
5 feet.
Like an old pump station or something, maybe?
looks like it's something carved out. It's that little piece right there.
Oh, no, that's, I'm sorry, that's, Central Hudson has a gas
Okay.
meter right there.
Yeah, some utility at site.
Okay.
Well, even if they're non-conforming uses, why can't we just leave the zoning alone on those? I mean, the owner's not coming in and asking for anything, and, I mean, if they decide to change their use in the future, they gotta come to us anyway. If we throw multifamily, we give up some,
you can
some
do that.
control that the town would have to
Yeah,
make sure that.
you just end up with this weird little RM zone with an R20, splitting an R20, which, assuming you leave Schmeling Glass alone, so you go R20,
But
you know, RM.
even the other one that's a three-family, why would we don't need to rezone it?
Again, if the town, it's entirely your prerogative. We looked at it and said it makes sense to legalize what it already
I mean,
is.
if it's a three-family now, you give it multifamily, that could make it a six-family.
No,
I mean-
because they're limited in terms of the acreage. The upper limit is 6 units an acre. They're about a half acre. They're not getting more than the 3 they already have.
Okay. So, but I mean, we don't really need
You don't have to
change
do it.
anything?
You don't.
I mean,
It was
Yeah,
a
it
suggestion.
doesn't- I mean,
If
you
you're gonna-
said-
You
if you're
said it's
gonna-
an illegal three-family now?
No,
It's a legal, non-conforming use in the R20 zone,
all right.
right? I mean, it's legal
My
as it
preference
is.
would be to leave the ones that aren't asking to be rezoned, just leave them alone, because we don't need to. And if they come back in later, that's fine. I mean, I would just look at this one piece.
I mean, this is an odd stretch of 9G anyway. It's kind of a mix. You've got some commercial, you got some.
No, I know,
yeah,
but that's what I say, I mean,
I'm fine with that. I mean, it was just.
I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
like,
Recommendation.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah,
planning
again, it's
purposes,
a
but-
suggestion. If you,
I've been through there, I haven't been through there lately.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the neighborhood is turning commercial, turning multifamily, turning single-family, or not turning anything and just doesn't have a definition yet. But, I mean, if we put 3 multifamilies in a row and we start to kind of make it where there's a lot of, apartments and rentals, you could start to change the rest of it around there. I mean, I guess I'd focus on the piece that he's looking
yeah,
at.
again, in terms of just what we were seeing on the ground, if you want to do it, fine. If you don't, don't.
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
But we can change this man's property, because that's useful.
Sure,
No, it looks
Yeah.
nice.
sure.
This
The
is,
house on it, if you had been to zoning, I know I spoke to Doreen earlier, she told her which property it was, it was on the screensaver down there, it was just a beat-up
Yeah, had a
building
tree
for
growing through the
years,
front,
and,
yeah.
It certainly wasn't contributing to the area, that's for sure.
Yeah, I did go to planning back probably 3 or 4 years ago with a presentation of this, which they were all very positive on.
All right. So any questions from the board before we?
I mean, this is 30 years back you built this?
No, 20 years.
20? Yeah, I mean, I assume our planning department will sort of update the
Oh, yeah.
look and things of it, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I do think it's nice to have that area, some of these properties cleaned up and improved and fixed up. And, it is, again, I like to have them kind of come through the board so we see what's going on. And, we have an idea of, which direction that neighborhood's going in or any of these neighborhoods, so.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just tough to put a single family right in the middle of
Yeah,
Schmeling
yeah,
Glass.
Tough spot, yeah.
It's a tough spot right now, so I figured this would be a good investment for both of us, really.
I hope you change the direction so that Schmeling will, when Schmeling closes or whatever they do with it, it goes up, not down. So.
True.
All right, thank you, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
We'll move on to number 3 on the agenda, still nothing, huh?
Okay, sure thing.
10 Tucker Drive rezoning.
A little while back, the town board on its own motion rezoned several of the properties on Tucker Drive, including the police court facility. That entire area had at one time been neighborhood business. It was mostly converted over to shopping center business. So that would again include the town-owned properties up at the sort of the north end by Van Wagner Road, the McAllister's property, Culligan, or I'm sorry, not Culligan, it's the church property, formerly Culligan, the Hildegard property. There's a delicatessen on the southeastern corner of Tucker Drive and Friendly Lane, and then the building that has the IBM Federal Credit Union in it. The one piece that was sort of left out from the rezoning is actually be in use and has historically been in use for warehousing. At one point, the TEG Federal Credit Union had been located in the southern end of the building. They had the drive-through. You could still sort of see the remnants there. But the entirety of the property is being used for warehousing and storage. What we intended to do, and we simply missed it, was to recommend to the board that this piece of property be incorporated into the heavy industrial zone located to the north. Right now, it's the remnant BN piece within that entire area, because all of the properties to the south and to the east and northeast, to the west and northwest, have now been converted to shopping center. It had been our intention to include that at the time that we did the other rezoning, so as to effectively move the heavy industrial zone south to incorporate that piece, because that's what the use is.
Is somebody looking at it all, Neil, or
I'm sorry?
is there a reason behind this? Is somebody looking at this property, or?
No, it was just, again, we were sort of left with a BN piece in the middle, at the southern end of a heavy industrial, and otherwise surrounded by a shopping center piece. It doesn't seem to be the appropriate zone for what the use is. And again, we meant to do this at the time we recommended that you rezone the other pieces, and we simply neglected to include it. It's kind of a cleanup from our standpoint, and particularly when you look at what the use is. It seems appropriate to incorporate that into the heavy industrial zone that's right next door.
Any questions? No? All right. We'll move on. Dan, are you ready? All right, we'll go back to number 1, Creek Road Apartments conceptual plan.
Thank you for your patience and understanding on that.
We have.
I'm sure John is very sorry. Right, John?
Indeed.
Okay. I'm Dan Kohler with Hudson Land Design. To my left is John Page Jr. And John has property on Creek Road, which is north of the
I could have,
Might be an on-off switch, you just gotta
could be.
count on that.
Okay. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, so the piece of property is on the east side of Creek Road. It's basically opposite to Stewart Shops. It's north of the rail trail and south of Pendle Road. Over the stream and through the woods over to the east would be a cemetery. We've got a zoning district. That's the neighborhood business here. The other sliver of property in question here is also partially within the BN zone and partially within the R20 zone. Now, what John is looking to do is change the zone to residential multifamily. And the reason behind it, there's several reasons. There are residential multifamily districts surrounding the property. On the east side of Creek Road, over and through here, these are all residential multifamily already. And then that zone goes across and goes back behind the Stewarts and the auto body shop and over into Colonial Manor, and that's all residential multifamily. All along Pendle Road on the south side is residential multifamily. So it's a continuation of an existing district. We'd just be expanding on that district. Part of the reason, if you're familiar with the Golf Plaza, which has been built somewhat recently, the uses that are provided and allowable within the BN district aren't really desirable in the area right now. The Golf Plaza has not had any tenancy. It's a brand new building.
Where are you in relation to the Golf Plaza?
We're north of the Golf Plaza. On
Okay,
the
so
same
closer
side.
closer to Dutchess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so, based on that and based on the fact that Colonial Manor is over 95% rented at this point and that there's still a need for apartment uses, we thought it was natural. It's It's what John does in several of his other ventures. And the parcel topography really lends itself to doing something other than neighborhood business. You've got this short section along Creek Road. Neighborhood business really requires exposure. And as soon as you get to the top of the hill here, it drops down. And so this whole portion of the property with regard to business neighborhood really didn't make sense topographically. So that's what we're here for. We're here to ask that you consider that. We've met with a few of the members of the Land Use Committee, not all as a whole. And we've had some positive feedback at that point, and looking to see how you guys all feel about this.
And there's how many units?
40.
40
Now we're
units?
showing 40. The residential multifamily basically allows, I believe it's six dwelling units per acre. Technically, it could go up to about 56, would be allowable.
Are you counting that parcel, that the last three digits, 640, the long, thin piece along the back?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So you're counting that for part of the property?
Correct.
But you really couldn't build anything there because every spring, that's completely soaked.
There are environmental constraints on the property, yes. And there's actually some steeper slopes on the other portion of the property as well.
I've done some work for the cemetery, and it was last spring of 13, and that was under a lot of water. So how does that, if you're talking about the number of houses per acre, units per acre, if we allow that to be counted in as usable, that increases the number of units per acre when none of that property really could be used.
Well,
Neil, when you have like a steep slope or unused or wetland, you back that acreage out in the calculation, or no?
That's actually something we had talked about adding. Right now, you only find that in the subdivision regulations where you take out the constrained lands. I talked with the Land Use Committee about adding that for purposes of taking out the nasty lands when we're doing calculations for multifamily and for commercial. But right now, that is not in our zoning codes and our subdivision regs.
So if you were doing a subdivision with single-family homes, you'd have to back that
You would
out.
have to take that out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't seem to make almost more sense when you're doing multifamily, that you would take out that unusable land? If you're doing.
Well, that's why we talked about adding it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have not at this point.
So if you take out the unusable portion, is that what gets you to 40, or does that knock you down below, or are you above that, or?
Probably close.
there'd probably be about 30 dwelling units.
Because the other thing is, if it's flooding in the back and you develop this, you're probably not going to decrease the flooding. There's more likelihood that you're going to increase flooding, create the impervious surface, and I guess that would be my concern, that whatever, the neighbors to the left, to the right, across the street, downstream get impacted, and we end up having people that come in a year or two later and say, water's plowing through my property and who's going to help me? And we sort of shrug our shoulders at that point. So, I mean, I would just be cautious that whatever we do, and we make sure that we're aware of that impact. And if the suggestion from the planning department or development department is to back that out, we probably should do that on the front end.
I think it's an excellent use. I mean, it's a perfect spot, apartment buildings. Just not counting that big piece of property. And what about the wrecked cars that are still there? You're gonna,
That's on a separate parcel.
That's to the south.
yeah, that's where most of them are, but according to this picture, there's a bunch of them in the 640 parcel.
Well, that is GIS property lines. I'm not sure if they're on the property or not. That
Okay.
would be subject to when we do an actual survey, and if we find out that they're on there, then
What I want to hear is, if they're there, they're gone,
Absolutely.
okay? And whatever's in the ground, oil and antifreeze is gone.
Do you
Agreed.
have You said you do other projects. Do you have other projects nearby, like newer projects?
I managed Colonial Manor for 10 years, and I'm well-versed in the apartment business, and I know the demand out there, and I'm familiar with this area, obviously.
But I was just wondering if you've built anything recent that we could...
I added 50 units up in Kingston, New York, a family-owned apartment complex.
Okay.
Same size, 40 by 100 buildings.
And you build them, own them, keep them, and...
Correct.
Right. I mean, I have a certain comfort level, especially with someone local that's going to build it, because, you know, it tends to be a higher level of responsibility.
Absolutely, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I've heard the name.
So we won't count that long strip for the total number of units, because that would be inappropriate.
Then we got
And if the
nothing.
cars are there, the cars are gone. Okay, then it's a good idea.
But if we don't count the long strip, what do we got? 30 units?
I don't know.
Something like that.
It's like having a hotel with 5 rooms. It's like,
Is it that much of a difference?
there's a critical mass you got to meet to make it worthwhile. And
Right.
the more we cut away and whittle away at the number, the less desirable it becomes. For example, Colonial Manor is across the street. It's on 8.46 acres, and it's 116 units. We're proposing 40 units on almost 10 acres.
And what size
And it's got
units are
water,
you?
sewer, and gas. Exactly the same size buildings, same design.
But what you're proposing doesn't, I don't see it as impacting this strip, the wet strip in the back, the 640 parcel. I think it's fine the way it is with 40 or whatever the houses are. I don't think that's a problem. I'd be concerned about the drainage. You don't want,
Well, we'll have to meet the stormwater speedies requirements and all that.
but 40 units is not, for that piece of property there, I don't think that's a big number.
I don't either, especially considering across the street, you got 116 units on under 9 acres.
And it is the right space for this.
It's surrounded by,
Apartment complexes typically on properties that are difficult. It's,
What?
if you go through around the
What do you mean by
area, you'll
they're
always
not-
find.
Apartment complexes aren't properties that typically aren't difficult. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that a lot of times when you have apartment complexes, it was on a property that had restrictions with regard to steep slopes and wetlands
Oh,
and
okay.
floodplains.
Okay.
And that's the kind of property that this is right here.
The apartments, are they 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom?
primarily 1 bedroom. I suspect there'll be a few 2s, but mostly 1s.
Oh,
Okay. And do you have an idea of what sort of price range they're going to be in?
Yes. $850 roughly for a 1 bedroom.
okay, good.
That's good. That's,
It's a good start.
And that includes heat and hot water.
Oh, that's good.
And,
In fact, I don't know if it's how relevant it is, but I may as well say it. At one point, this property was RM, and the owner changed it for whatever reason, and we're just trying to put it back.
I think it's an excellent use. I don't think there's a problem with 40 units, but it's awful wet.
The only reason I made the deal with
That's why we're
Sala
not showing
on that
anything on
long,
the
wet piece is because without it, the 6 units per acre, with the constraints we have, it's.
But with 40 units, that's a viable project in
Is this
terms
the
of.
same piece?
I agree, and that includes the long, thin strip we're talking about as
You
well.
use the
Okay.
calculation.
Possible, I don't know.
So you use a long strip just to make the calculation numbers, basically.
Right,
Exactly.
right. And that's what is allowed now in our town code, so.
What borders that long strip besides the cemetery?
Falkhill Creek, I believe. It's a use, I mean, nothing's ever gonna happen with it if we don't do something with it here, I don't think.
Yeah, I think as part of anything we would do, we
Yeah.
would just throw that land in conservation or something.
Yeah, it's not gonna get
I mean, you're
developed.
going to keep it
Just-
as open space.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
there's
we're not
there's
gonna-
nothing we would
can't
do
build
there, and
anything on
then
That was up here years ago.
I walked
if
back
it would
there, I
make
was,
anybody feel more comfortable, we could put
Junkyard.
conservation easement on it,
Yeah.
and that way it's just in perpetuity.
I went back there once, I had mud up to my knees, it's,
Yeah.
there's nothing going on back there.
It's open space, no matter what you do.
They'll provide a nice buffer on the west side of the cemetery there as well, forever.
Puts this
Mm-hmm,
in.
The back end neighbors are
Quiet.
quiet.
They don't complain.
And then the front end neighbors across the street are like businesses mainly.
Stewards.
I'm sorry, which ones?
The front end are stewards.
Yes,
Used-
Stewart's, there's the
used
auto
car.
repair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
car place. Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions about the project? Doreen?
Thank you. Yeah, when I looked at this on parcel access today, it looked like two separate parcels. One was 5 point something, one was 4 point something, and one is owned by Mr. Sala. So you don't own both pieces currently?
I have an option agreement with Mr. Sala.
Okay, so
if
you were just using the 5-acre parcel, then at 6, you would only be allowed to put 30 units in.
Or less, because we have steep slopes.
Okay, so without that other area, you would only be allowed 30 units or
30
less?
or less, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Marlene?
Hello.
I just have one question. You said your name was John?
John Page.
Page
Yes.
Jr.?
Yes.
Are you related to the Pages in the area?
Yes.
Are you John's son?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thus the junior.
All makes sense now.
Coming together now.
Well, I was, there are a lot of Pages in the
Yeah.
area, and some of them are related and some of them aren't, so I
No
know his
problem.
father, and that's why I wondered.
Thanks. Thank you, Marlene. All right, anything else from the board? You guys have anything else to add?
No.
Otherwise,
Thanks for your
we'll
time.
be in touch. Thank you. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along. Number 4, I asked Neil to come in, and I don't think I did a very good job last year, or last year. Seems like last year.
Hey, we've been at this a while.
When we talked about home occupation, so I asked Neil to come in and just give a brief overview as to the thought behind the process, what you know it would accomplish, and then we'll just try not to belabor the issue. But I just didn't think I presented it well last week. So Neil,
Yeah, the impetus behind this is there are a couple of things that are going on. Right now, if you look at the top, and I'm referring to this handout here with the strike-throughs and the underline, our definition of home occupation assumes something that is done as an occupation or a business activity which results in a product or service. And we have at least one instance in the town where a home occupation was established that actually fell out from this definition because it's not a business activity, it's not an occupation. It's actually something that is being conducted where clothing and shoes and whatever are collected and being given away for free in a single-family home in a single-family residence. And it was something that literally fell out from our definition, and it was not something that ultimately was determined by the legal department several years ago to be something that could be regulated under zoning. And so that's sort of the first thing that you see is eliminating the current home occupation definition in favor of the simpler one, which just says the use of a portion of a dwelling unit for non-residential purposes by a resident thereof. And so that would capture activities that are done both for gain and ones which are done for charitable purposes. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is to, instead of talking about floor space, right now the code talks in terms of limitations of 25% of the floor area of a home for use in the home occupation. That can be a lot of space depending on the size of the home. It seems to make more sense to talk in terms of habitable space, which would eliminate things like bathrooms, toilets, closets, halls, storage, utility spaces that are not otherwise considered habitable spaces. And so those are the two proposed definition changes that you see at the very top. Then the other thing that's been going on, and we've had a number of home occupation requests, and they kind of come in sporadic. I'm not going to tell you there's a tidal wave or a tsunami of these things, but we have had a number of instances where people are coming in, they're sole proprietors, they're baking cookies, they're making crafts, they're doing things in their homes, and they're seeking to legalize their occupation. So they come in, they talk to us, and immediately they're confronted with application and escrow fees of several hundreds of dollars, and they're saying, but it's just me working in my home. And again, this goes back a couple of years. We thought it would be worthwhile to present to the board sort of a two-tiered home occupation regulation. The first tier would allow somebody who's truly like a sole proprietor, maybe have one person working for them, but that they meet the first tier of the regulations. And this would be under, I'm looking at specific criteria.
Right.
Okay, where, and again, we've sort of defined what those uses might be, that they don't have to come in for a special use permit, but they do need to register with the zoning administrator. So we know that they're there. Okay, and they have to meet all of the other criteria. If they don't meet those criteria, they get kicked into the second tier under the specific criteria, and that lands them in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special use permit, subject to a public hearing and that sort of thing. That's what we're really trying to do. We were trying to make it easier and less cumbersome for the truly small home occupation. Typically, they're solo operators, sole proprietors, whatever you want to call them. They may have an employee or two, more likely not.
Bless you.
But we just didn't think that it was fair to subject those people to hundreds of dollars of application escrow fees, a mandatory public hearing, and basically a 60-day process to get through this, assuming there's no hiccups along the way. That's what you're looking at here.
And I also, let me just make just one quick comment. And I also think that may be why some people trying to, hope they can just, float under the radar and not come in is for those very reasons. This would allow the insignificant, home occupation where the guy isn't impacting his neighborhood to come in at no fee, just to register and, kind of no harm, no foul. Right now, they kind of
the zoning fees and escrow, how much do we charge?
For a home occupation, it's $250 on the application fee. According to the chart, it's an $800 escrow fee. I typically lower that. It was a fee that was set a number of years ago based sort of on historic experience with special use permits.
If we do,
but I do adjust those.
Someone comes in for a zoning variance for their pool or their deck, do we charge escrow fees also?
Yes, we do.
Yep.
And the escrow fees, I thought is that covering our in-house staff time or?
Both.
See,
the consulting as well as a portion of in-house, which is really a very small portion of it.
Based on that, I think we might need to take another look at those escrow fees, because my honest opinion is, you're doing an apartment building, multifamily housing, escrow fees make complete sense. You're doing, a mall, office building, escrow fees make complete sense. You're extending your deck, you're putting a pool in, you're putting a fence in, the home occupation, some of these things. I kind of think that's sort of part of what you pay for in your tax bill, and it shouldn't be a separate fee because it's not. We have staff here. I guess I'm a little concerned. For the little guy that's not doing much, I think we should allow them to come in. And like Todd said, because you alluded to that, you come in, you get hit with an $800 fee, people say, "Mine, I'm going home, forget it, you never saw me." I think it would be beneficial in that you'd have more compliance if we weren't hitting with $800 walking through the door, and you'd also give people an opportunity. Some people probably just say, "Forget it, I won't do it," and it's not anything that would be objectionable. Other than the fact that they're like, geez, I can't afford the $800 in addition to, whatever I got to pay for a contractor and whatever else I got to pay for, the other things. So again, I think for smaller things, that should be part of the cost of, I pay taxes in the town. I come into the town building, town departments, and some basic things get processed without me getting hit with a fee. And that's what our staff is here for day in, day out. The big projects, I do think, maybe we adjust some of these larger commercial fees to sort of offset some of the rest of it, because I do think that your average resident, the little guy, should be able to walk in and not go broke because
Well, as I mentioned, I adjust the escrow
Right.
fee. I have that authority in the code. I can't do anything about the application fees. Those have to be collected. I very typically, particularly for somebody who's coming in baking cookies, I can't justify it. That doesn't make any sense. I give most of it back. We do need to cover the cost of the professional who's at the table in the meeting. And typically that's running anywhere from, $60 to $100 or something like that, historic. But the challenge is, I don't know application to application if somebody's going to show up at a public hearing and object to that so that we run over to another meeting. And so we're chasing escrows all the time.
It disappears quick.
It's
I've
the
had a
bane of my
number of
existence, I can
residents
tell you
call
that.
me and say, it was what seemed to be a simple request, and I agreed with them. They made, Neil just follows the rules. They put their $600, $800 down in escrow. I say, Neil, how much a refund they're going to get? I mean, it's gone.
No, and I realize it runs up quickly, but I think there was a while back now for sheds under a certain size, it's no longer required that they get a building permit.
Right.
And, some of these little things, you leave people alone and you let them live their lives.
That's what this was also aimed at.
Yeah, no, that's why I say I like that part of this because of the fact that, and I didn't even realize about the escrow fees and everything else, but I like that part of it because I think some of the little things that most people would not even look twice at it, you try to leave people alone. I know Doreen will disagree with me a little bit on that, but I do think, and again, I think Todd had some concerns about that first category. I'm fine if you want to limit it more and constrain it a little bit more and drop more people in the second category. But I do think that first category is a good idea that, Neil, that you brought up. And I do think that, we should have some basic things people can do without it costing them an arm or a leg.
Right.
And so many times I've heard people say, oh, geez, you don't want to get a building permit, it's going to cost you a ton of money. And my response to that is, no, it's not. It's a fairly nominal fee, but you get the benefit of the town building inspector being involved and making sure people follow the right rules, do the work correctly, and it usually ends up better.
It's the cheapest consumer protection you can buy.
It's usually not us that cost the people in the long run. We help them. So I want to make sure that we're sort of user-friendly all around. That's why I say I like this idea, that first category.
And your suggestion, Stefan, is in here, which you brought up last week, where even if something would fall in the first category, but it's some oddball thing we didn't think of, Sarah sees it, she could still determine.
Right.
That still needs to go before the ZBA for.
Right. In other words, Sarah or the
interpretation.
zoning administrator would need to be convinced that they
C1,
meet all the
second,
parts
C1,
of the first
A.
category.
One of the
First
people that
It's what you
spoke
can do.
said, I think we had a total of 4 of these applications.
Jim Challey said he thought we had about that many last
About
week.
4, Jim? 5. So we're not talking about
We're
so
not-
the
we're
idea
not
is we're
huge
about
times.
encouraging people to tell us that they're
Yeah,
doing
exactly.
it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
They're doing-
convinced,
Yeah.
that we've got any number of people who are very quietly working
yeah.
in their houses.
hundreds.
They're making a living, or they're
Oh, yeah.
working moonlighting, or whatever. Very often what happens is, if somebody is doing something that perhaps requires, let's say, a sales tax ID number, or they've got to do something to incorporate, now they're calling attention to themselves, or if they have, the occasional client who comes to the house, or if they're making something and hauling it out in their personal car. Again, nobody, by and large, the residents of the town they're okay with complying with the rules as long as they understand what they are. They're willing to come in and register and do what they need to. It's just that some of these, they get told what the fees are and they go, it's just me working out of my house. And particularly, started working for the town in this position in 2008, which is about the time the economy really tanked. And I do know that there were any number of people that were struggling and trying to figure out what to do to make a living. We had a number of people that were kicking tires coming in, asking about applications, never actually made applications. And as Jim may very well be right, maybe it was 5, it was a handful. It has not been a lot. But again, if the idea here is that if we're going to regulate home occupations, I think personally we should make it easy for that very first tier where they're very quiet. There's no impact on the residential character of the neighborhood. They've got a home office, they're doing whatever they're doing, and it has no impact on the neighbors.
And waive the fees.
Yeah.
You want to spur
This does
compliance.
not cover home,
Yeah.
in other words, I work for a big company, and I can, what's it called, telecommute, I can do maybe 1 day a week, I can be home from the office and do everything there.
Yeah, it's just your office and your home, right?
So that doesn't count for this.
No.
I
mean, you can do that without necessarily registering. That's,
My thought would be, for the basic ones, the $250 application fee would be the fee. That, that the rest of it, I guess I would say.
I'd rather not even have a fee.
Right, I'd not have the fee.
Well, I think we've always had an
This has to
application fee.
Right now, whether you're
If you're going
a
to
solo operator or whether you've got a couple of employees, everybody is subject to the same fee schedule.
But if you're going through if you're going to the ZBA, there's always been an application fee.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Then there ought to be.
Right. We
Right,
have,
so
and a mandatory public hearing.
I'd almost say that, whatever the basic fee is, that's fine. The escrow fee for those smaller uses, I'd say, if.
See, yeah, I mean, I'd rather waive the fee for the small guys
I
or
think
just
you're better off-
register.
That's fine if you want to do it that way, but I
Let's
just
just
think.
have a registration process. That's
Yeah.
what this sets
Fill
up.
out the form.
If you go before the ZBA,
Skip
you're
the
right.
meeting, skip the
There's
application,
a fee,
come
there's an
see Sarah.
escrow.
Fill out the,
I think when you go from the basic use to you need to go to ZBA, that's
Yes.
where.
right.
You're right.
I agree with you.
Where the professionals really come into play.
Right.
The rest of it should be fairly straightforward.
Right.
To encourage people to come in,
I do also think that there should be some sort of recertification, either year out or 5 years out, to verify that, what you said you were doing.
Some
you
kind of a
still did.
renewal,
idea.
sure.
Yeah.
Just because, some of these things expand, today I'm just doing a little thing out of my garage, and, then I name the company Apple, and things. So, like, a little thing can get big, but you just want to make sure that we revisit it at some point, because if we give an approval today and go, oh, yeah, no, that's fine, you're not doing much, and then a year or two down the road, it becomes a lot bigger operation, we should have some sort of mechanism to say, yeah, that, and I don't know if we have the approval that's specific to that, I said I'm doing A, B, and C only, and if you
Well,
expand beyond that.
Yeah, that language in there for C1, the second full paragraph, I think covers that. So if you've got a registration, you've got the zoning administrators aware of the business and, periodically picks up the file and follows up, and where it says, where the zoning administrator determines the proposed home
But
occupation
I would
does
almost
not
say,
or will
see, I would
not.
almost think that there should be an automatic, either, well, the IRS, if you get a tax exemption for a charity from the IRS, they give you initial ruling, and then a certain period of time later, you have to verify
Like a
by giving the actual,
re-registration
the actual financials. So I think there should be something that, we give an initial ruling and say, yeah, it looks fine, but there should be something, whether it's a year or 5 years down the road, where they have to come in and verify that this is actually the business that I've been running.
Okay, like
And
just
just
the
so that-
re-registration process.
Because if we make it that we gotta chase them, we got a lot of things going on in a
Yeah.
busy zoning
Well,
administration.
and you could also be
And-
chasing a lot of businesses that have gone out of business. In 5 years, they could have, most of them may have
True.
disappeared.
Still got an
A
office.
lot of people
you know.
start these things up and then never do anything
So
with them.
send them a letter and say, it's been 2 years, you're still doing this, stop by town hall and see
Yeah.
the zoning
I
people.
think 2 years sounds good. Let me
Yeah.
double check with Sarah, see what's
I
a
think it's
reasonable
perfect. Yeah,
period of
it's a
time.
great
if you
idea.
think- But 2 years
And
seems reasonable.
I agree with Todd, I don't think there should be a fee for this first level, 250.
There isn't a fee
No
for the
fee.
first level.
As proposed right now, there's no fee.
No, it shouldn't be.
The other thing is the second level, well, I guess one of the issues I have is with habitable space, doesn't it become tough? I mean, when you look at square footage for someone's property, you can go on the county website, or there's a lot of different places where you can find square footage. To try to figure out square footage minus bathrooms, closets, and all that stuff becomes how would you be able to do that?
The building department ends up doing
They
it.
should have a pretty good
This
idea.
kicks you into that kind of a category.
I'd rather take that out, and if the first category is 15% of the, square footage, and the second category is a maximum of 25%, I'd rather take out that habitable space and leave it to the ZBA to decide that it fits based on the size of the building, the use, and everything else. I mean,
So
we're
you
not
would
talking
do-
about a big swing, but it just seems to be a lot easier to say.
What are you saying, take out
it's-
D?
It's 4,000 square feet, and 25% would be 1,000, or it's 1,000 square feet, and, it seems like it's easier just to do it that way versus, people arguing over, that's not a closet.
Devon, under 2,
I
the
would just
last page.
I would get rid of that habitable.
Well, but the habitable space takes out things like walk-in attics and basements.
Right.
Garages.
unfinished
I would think
basements,
we
things
leave it
like
in
that,
there.
yeah.
The building department is used to doing
Yeah,
this.
this is
no
the
magic number to
terminology
them.
they're used to seeing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if
But
you're,
why-
if you're
but are
proposing
we
to
fi-
finish
are we-
off.
But are
a-
we finding situations where there's just too much?
Well, I
Because
think
of-
at some point, yeah, if you've got somebody that's bound and determined to use, let's say you've got a 5,000 square foot house, I mean, 25% of the floor area of that, which might include, the basement area, and if you got a walk-in closet, it becomes an awful lot of floor area within the residence. I think you're now changing the character of the residence, which may have an
But isn't
impact
that
on the
going to be
neighborhood.
subject to the DBA's discretion?
Well, that's,
Or lower,
you're setting-
or knock it down to 20% of the square foot. I just don't like the kind of, we start, I don't know, to me, I guess the building department has some of that, but,
they do that today.
so the building department will go in and calculate the bathroom is this much, the
Oh,
closet's
yeah.
that much, the closet's that
Absolutely.
much?
Absolutely.
When we have applications?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't it be
yeah.
easier just take the gross square footage and subtract out?
That's not the way the building code does it. I'm
No?
just letting you,
Probably
that's
such a
just the way
set
it's done.
standard that they know.
It's standard.
So
They-
in the
Closets,
way
no.
the way our zoning code is written right now, we do it by habitable space?
We do it by floor area, which includes, basically everything in the house, even places that utility rooms,
so if-
closets, and
But, so do you subtract out the closets and the bathrooms from what you consider to be used by the business?
you take that out of the habitable space total, and then
Okay.
whatever is left is 25% of that, or 15% of that.
I just think
Honestly, if you're, I guess the converse of that is the more space within the residence. Keep in mind, this is supposed to be occupation within a residence, and
Right.
the home occupation is not supposed to change the character of the use as a single family or a dwelling.
Well, that's why I say I'd lower the 25 to 20. I just think it makes life simpler if you say, this is how big the square footage is, and this is how much space you can use. I mean, the reality is
They have to show us a floor plan anyway.
right.
It's easy enough to calculate.
For the amount we have, I don't think it's worth the worry.
Okay, and now in the first part too, where you have listed what is allowed. And under art studio, does that also include like handicrafts? I've got a friend with an embroidery machine. My sister's got a knitting machine. Do those things fall underneath art studio?
Yeah, I would say so, sure.
And the soap makers and things like that, they all fall under
Yeah,
that, so those are all allowed uses, okay.
yeah, I mean, and then you look, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you have a more expansive definition or something, I just seemed that was sort of all encompassing when we were putting that together.
And then so the other thing is I think the parking issue, and I forget what Jim had said. What was the bigger issue that people were coming in?
It was parking.
It was parking, not
I wasn't at
employees
the
or
last
customers.
meeting.
Okay.
The trips, come on up, Jim.
That's covered by business trips 4 or something in here.
Yeah, the two things that people seem to worry about when we have these hearings are the number of employees, because, that is non-residential. These are people that don't live there, that are coming and going, they're creating traffic, there's a parking issue and so on. So number of employees is an issue. And the other is customers coming back and forth. And, most of the things that are proposed under Tier 1, there are neither. There are neither employees, nor are there customers.
Right.
Often. I mean, it's and the amount of material that gets moved in and out is, it's a few cardboard boxes, and that's not disruptive. So those are the two things that seem to be most concerned when we come in.
And in application out in the world, the big problem that we currently have, and a problem that it's when it becomes more of an inventory-based business, right?
Yeah.
Because the professional services or, arts and crafts type of businesses where someone if someone's doing like arts and crafts and selling it on, what is it, Etsy?
Yeah, and they take
Yeah,
them
like
to farm
that.
markets.
I mean, they may
Right.
get a
Yeah.
UPS and a FedEx delivery each day, and
Yeah.
coming and a couple going out. But you're not having, it's not something crazy. But if you're selling, inventory, and it's, whether it's clothes or
But
whatever it
that's-
may be, it's a computer business and you're selling, hardware. Those I think are the ones that seem to impact. The other thing is the automotive type businesses, which I don't think we
Which are
allow
prohibited anyway.
at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then some of them are the businesses that use larger vehicles in their business and operate out of their home. So, let's say you have, you're an electrician and you have employees that work for you, and now you got 5 vans in your driveway.
That's not allowed anyway.
Yeah, and also retail's not allowed, so it's
Right.
not like if you're just buying things to sell, like my friend who imports the African baskets. That would not be allowed here. Good thing she's in Hudson, but yeah, that would not be allowed here. And the other thing is no stock and trade, because I had also been approached by people that wanted firearms. They were concerned about firearms sales, and these guys take them to gun shows and they sell them over the internet. That's under no stock and trade. That's also not allowed.
Right. Right. Yeah, but you're right, it's an inventory, the inventory-based types of uses tend to be problematic for us. And we've had, we had a fellow came in not too long ago with wanted to do a craft beer operation, and, it was just obvious it just certainly didn't fit. And he was gonna have some problems with the building code anyway, in terms of the retrofit.
So the code that's currently written, does it limit the number of employees or customers per day?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes, okay. So that's not changing anything?
That's not, no, not materially, no.
I mean, and again, I honestly think that the first category should be tight, the second category, not to say it should be loose, but it should be somewhat broad, because otherwise there's no point in having to find people at ZBA, because if we say this is the only thing you can do,
Yeah,
then
as
you're
I
not giving
mentioned
ZBA the
before,
ability to do their job.
in my recollection, there have been 5 or 6 of these home occupation applications in the last, say, 3 years. And all of them would have fallen into the category 2. So we're really not changing much. And I completely agree that we should just make it easy for people that want to come in and say, look, I'm building websites, and I'm going to have somebody come in maybe once a day, and sit down with me at my computer, and we're going to design the website, and then I'm going to do it, and just have them register. As you say, this might be the next Google. Who knows? Be nice.
It would be nice.
But in the meantime, let folks do their thing. I just want to add one further comment, and that's about the habitable space. It becomes hard for us sometimes on the ZBA to know how reasonable the space limitation is based on just the square footage, because you have some homes, for example, where you've got an attached garage. Okay, that becomes now part of the floor area. Well, if you've got a big garage that's attached to the house, potentially you might be able to convert one whole floor of the house to your business, because you're essentially counting that garage. When in fact,
Based on that, then, shouldn't we add back in bathrooms and toilets into habitable space? Because, I mean, not that I live in my bathroom, although some people may say different, but the reality is your habitable space, to me, that's part of it. And if you had
It is part of the habitable space. It's bathrooms, toilets, right?
No, it's subtracted out. Shouldn't we subtract out the garage, the unfinished space, the attics, like that? Not the bathroom? Because if you have a home office, you probably have closet space in the office for supplies, a bathroom so that if you actually have people come in.
Yeah, you can fiddle with that if you want to, but there are some of these big spaces that I
Right,
think
yeah,
we
I mean, I
don't want added
I understand
in.
what you mean now because, it makes
Yeah,
sense that
an
you
unfinished
take out the
basement, for
garage, the
example.
crawl space, the attic, things like that don't really, you could say we got the square footage, but it's not really anything that is part of what you'd use. And then if you use the attic, garage, or crawl space, the percentage starts to sort of skew off. But if I do think, again, call me crazy, but I think a toilet's part of my habitable space. So, so I would, my suggestion would be the
Hey. What do they call it? Too much information. I say.
TMI.
Yeah,
But my thought would be you would be subtracting out the stuff that again it's store garage.
So it was to say
attic.
garage, attics, and other unfinished storage or utility
Yeah.
spaces. Yeah, that's fine.
Those are the big ones
The
that
obvious.
are going to materially affect.
Okay, then I'm good with it because I think
numbers.
because I think that then will give you a more honest and real comparison as to what they're living in, what they're working in.
Yeah, we just need some clarity.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
All right.
All right, great, thanks, Jim.
All right, so we'll make some.
Okay, all right, so I'll make
Thank
those
you.
adjustments, I'll give it back to you.
Yep.
And you can move it forward if you wish.
All right, all
great.
right, thanks. And, all right, moving right along. The next item of discussion is tattoo shops. And before we
Yeah.
begin, we have a model to show us some of the latest, Jim? Oh, wasn't you on this one? Oh, sorry. Just wanted to wake you up. We've had,
Leave to roll
we've had a number of residents inquire, I'd say over the last 6 months, about having a tattoo shop. Right now, it's not allowed in the town unless it was grandfathered in prior to code change. And, in each case, we told the applicant or the person inquiring that we'd, present it to the board and see what they wanted to do. The board members received a letter from actually a building owner in Arlington, and I'm not going to read the whole letter to you other than just one paragraph that I think would be of interest, and I think they make an interesting point, and they say, I know first that the image and regard for both the business and art of tattooing has dramatically changed over the years. What clearly in the past has been viewed as a fringe endeavor, attractive, potentially troublesome clientele is no longer the case today. Now, tattooing is a regarded and hygienic business that is both popular and accepted in the mainstream of the public. Tattoo services are now more to be regarded as a body art form and a legitimate expression of creativity in a business context. Newer tattooing facilities are not unkept storefronts of ill repute, as some past stereotypes may have regarded them. Regulation and sound health practices have legitimized these establishments, much like massage therapy has become mainstreamed in our society. So, I thought when we spoke to these folks, I think in each case it was a lady who was interested in actually opening the parlor. I thought they did a good job in presenting their case, presenting their situation. I think one in particular I remember was she'd gone to art school and all this kind of stuff. So it isn't.
Do we allow tattoo parlors anywhere in the town right now?
No, they're
don't.
completely excluded.
No, it got taken out.
That's part of the problem.
And honestly, I recall the discussions particularly about the Arlington Town Center, not allowing them. And we only have one right now. It's on Raymond Avenue. It's on the second floor.
We have one up by Maris too,
Over
right?
by,
Was one in
yeah, there's
Arlington.
one over
One in
by-
Arlington.
Two.
one.
On Raymond, yeah.
Yeah.
Maris across from the school.
That,
Where's the one in Marist?
It's in that plaza across
that
from the
blue
school.
shopping center right there on the corner.
Oh, okay. Oh,
across the
yes,
street
yes,
from
yes. I'm
Maris,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, actually, I think that's Art Grace's son.
Yeah,
Right.
it's-
Yeah.
The comparison to a massage parlor,
Probably not.
given the current state of the
Probably not
property
a
in town of
good,
Poughkeepsie, is sort of a bad comparison. And I guess, one of my concerns would be, is this considered an adult business? Because can you, under a certain age, can you get a tattoo?
You have to be over 18, otherwherwise you have to have
Or with parents' permission.
But that's the
Right.
same way with piercings,
right,
even
piercings, the
ear
whole bit,
piercings,
right.
you have to have parents'
Right.
permission.
Right.
Yeah, I
You'll
mean-
find all
Well,
this
his
out when your
children are
girls get
little.
older, yeah.
And some things are perfectly fine, and sometimes the same use turns up to be not. And the massage parlor is the perfect example of where it can be perfectly fine and legitimate, and other times it can be.
Well, I think that's the
horrendously
case
bad
with
idea.
anything, you know.
So I guess my thought would be, I mean, I think the town should have a mix of a little bit of everything. I would say that we probably want to keep things that you have to be over a certain age in certain areas and not in others. So it probably wouldn't fit in business neighborhood. It probably wouldn't fit in residential.
I don't think we should personally put in any set spot. I think they should come in on a case-to-case basis. Because as you said, years ago, they had a horrible reputation. The one by Marist College, he has a fantastic reputation. There's one in the Village of Wappingers. He has a phenomenal reputation, and actually half of it's a boutique now.
Yeah.
For 2.5 storefront.
And the one in Vassar also has an excellent
I
reputation.
mean, the business that, I read the letter, the people, they own the Rao Plumbing Building on Main Street, across from Dunkin' Donuts. What they'd like to do there is put in a beauty salon and a tattoo place. So maybe something similar to what you're talking of, and that's what they want to do
The
there.
difficulty with
Do the process.
Jay, the difficulty with having them come on a case-by-case is that it's a use variance, which by design is supposed to be hard to get. So if we were to allow them, we would need to do it in a way either through a special use permit process or something where they come in and it's subject to a board review. I didn't prepare anything for the board in the way of any proposed legislation. This is just a discussion. If you're interested, I'll work with Sarah and Eric and Brian, and we'll start to pull together some ideas about how to regulate these things, see what other communities are doing.
I think it's a good start.
Again, the biker tattoo shop is what people tend to remember,
Yeah.
but that doesn't seem to be what the
Those
market
days are
is
gone,
now.
but Stefan made a good point. You wouldn't want one, in a neighborhood or,
Right.
a home occupation business one at a time, but I think they fit in a lot of special spots. The one
Yeah.
Raymond Avenue, I mean, he's upstairs, he's not in a storefront, and he's been there for years, so I
The
assume.
requests,
Yeah.
the bulk of the requests that we've had have been for Main Street Arlington and on Raymond
Yeah.
Avenue,
I'm not, then.
which is a town center.
Bulk
so
of the requests, multiple requests?
Most of them have been for Arlington Town Center.
I'm not completely convinced that fits in the town center, but, I mean, like I said, I think there should be some sort of, somewhere in the code, there should be something for it. I do like Jay's idea where it kind of comes through, case by case. I think whatever we do, we got to just make sure that we avoid the unintended consequences.
Okay, well, we'll start.
And again, for someone like this person probably is a, completely legitimate business person with a really good plan, and it would be very nice. The problem is that you could have somebody that comes behind them and fits right through with the same exception that we carve out. So I just think we want to be careful so that we do have the ability to kind of screen it, and it's just not it definitely probably should be an as-of-right use in most zones.
Yeah, I'm thinking at a minimum, a special use permit, if we're going to allow them, which would subject
And
the
I
law
mean,
by
we-
itself to its own separate.
we should have a little bit of everything for people within reason. So this is not something that's crazy, and it's not, and again, aside from the reference to the massage parlor, he makes good points in that it does fit in a sort of eclectic neighborhood, and an eclectic area, and you go, when you think about different places, you go, they're there and they're not really a distraction or a nuisance in most. I actually have yet to see the one that is like the biker, the biker place. You don't. They all
Really
more
chain.
tend to be the places where they got artwork and they're kind of it's creative and
Multi-purpose, as Todd said, if that's what he has in his agenda, is good, because the one in the Village of Wappingers, I mean, he started on Market Street with a small shop, moved across with his wife, and they split 2 stores, and she runs a small boutique out of it. You wouldn't, if you drove by, you'd have no clue what it was. I mean, there's some
Is
of
that the
them,
one across from the bike shop?
it's sort of up the hill right next to Wagon Wheel Pizza there.
Yeah,
It's right there. It used to be on Market
Right.
Street, and he opened up a bigger shop. I mean, it's a nice
the only
upper class.
thing that I know, some of them are open very late, and I'd probably say that would
Yeah,
be
that's
my only
my
that would be one of
concern
my
is the
concerns,
hours they
that
keep.
There's a tendency that these things are open late, and
Right.
I'd kind of that I think is where you'd end up attracting the wrong group of people into an area that you might not have wanted to have if it's late night in an area that probably wouldn't fit. So
Well, we'll start pulling together information and we'll make a presentation to the board at a later date then.
Neil, how do we limit massage therapy? How's that limited? Where's that? Is that allowed in certain spots in the code? Because we have one in South Hills Mall.
Yeah, we have one in South Hills Mall. Yeah,
I mean, it's a
we
big,
have
nice
some,
There's a couple
quite a
individuals.
few,
We-
we have a few
we've-
legitimate
We've
ones.
had some
yes, we do.
very extensive conversations
Yes,
lately.
we have.
Around town about the massage therapy use and some current concerns that exist.
Burned one down.
Yeah.
One of them burned down, so.
Well, there's a new establishment that has raised a lot of concerns in my ward, and I mean, I think that's something that we need to look at. And again,
Yeah.
the biggest thing is these unintended consequences, because
Yeah,
you know, 9
but
times out of 10,
Can't guard against everything. There's a lot,
Yeah.
this is the first, well, not the, but, you know, there's extreme situations, everything. Most of the massage place, you think, I mean, not to name, but there's some that are really quality establishments, and outside of our area, they're even, you know, you talk about some of these resorts, they're really even nicer. Yeah, you know, you get your fringe, and you know, basically what we're talking about is, you know, potentially maybe, you know, illegal activity, that, you know,
Yeah,
that's
there's different kind, that's not really
obviously.
therapy.
You don't lump everybody into the same boat because of
No, but
something like that.
that's why I say there's got to be safeguards, because
Well, the
otherwise-
safeguards the laws. You
Right,
know,
no, I know, that's why,
criminal
that's why I say
law.
we gotta be careful with our zoning, because when our zoning allows stuff as of right, stuff drops in that is just completely inappropriate, and you kind of stand there flat-footed trying to figure out how that happened, and so, again, that's different. The massage discussion is completely different from the tattoo discussion, so.
So, Neil, you work up something,
Yeah.
you know, some language,
we'll
maybe
get
we
back to
look
you.
at just in the center or something like that, and
Okay.
then we'll, all right. Last but not least, number 6 is sign amendment for business shopping center district, and it's a very
Yeah,
specific.
this is something that Sarah brought to my attention some time ago, and it just seemed to make sense to finally do something about it. And it is, in this town, it is particular only to the Poughkeepsie Plaza. The regulations right now were written to accommodate, let's say, a galleria that has a ring road, and you've got major tenants that have space on multiple walls, and they can have signs around, literally around the entirety of the enclosed mall, provided, like you'll see the Macy's has signage at its Macy's end. You don't see Macy's signage over at the Target end. But each of those has outside wall space. In some cases, like the Macy's actually has 3 wall spaces, so they get 3 signs. That's fine. The second level of sign regulation for shopping center actually concerns something that looks more like the 9 Mall down in Wappinger, or the Hudson Plaza, where you've got the stores that are facing the road, facing the parking lot, and they're allowed so much wall signage, so much window signage. That's fine. The oddball one is the Poughkeepsie Plaza, which up to sometime, I think either late 70s, early 80s, looked like the Hudson Plaza, until they sacrificed the first row of parking and added stores out into what had formerly been the drive aisle in front of that store. So in other words, the inside places like where you have Art Craft, you've got Joann Fabrics, those were the storefronts. So, but because those interior tenants don't have wall space, a tenant wall space facing the parking lot, anytime those tenants change, they're having to come before the zoning board. Even if they've got a complying sign, they need the variance from the zoning board to put wall signage facing the parking lot. Why? Because that's not part of their tenanted space, because they're on the inside. This would take care of that. So in other words, they would still be subject to the size limitations, but they would not have to come before the zoning board just to put sign on.
Would it still be subject to the review of the zoning department, so that we?
The size of the sign.
Not the actual design of the sign?
Right.
They'd
Well,
have a sign
I mean,
by
I
right.
think I would, rather than just wave it right through, I think I would, well, the other ones, because they're on the front end of the building, they can just change the sign whenever they want and put whatever they want.
Well,
as long as
yeah,
it's the right
it's
size.
provided, right. Yeah, we don't regulate content, we don't have architectural standards for signs, right. So they can change
Can't be too
those. When
big.
the
It's
tenants
gotta
change,
be-
they
it's gotta-
change.
but-
All about size.
So
Basically-
for instance, right now, so
I mean,
if
I
you're
just-
familiar with the UPS store space,
Yeah.
that's actually, you enter from the sidewalk through the parking lot. They have a demised wall space that faces that. They can have a sign. They come in to see Sarah, get their permit, they pay their fee, they're off to the races. The art craft camera shop, which is on the inside, has to come before the zoning board to put a sign up on, let's say,
So-
the outside space.
So so we don't, no matter what the sign looks like or says, as long as it's the right size, we say it's okay?
We don't have standards that would otherwise prohibit it, no, and we don't regulate
We
content.
talked about,
How many more signs are we gonna have on the outside of the Poughkeepsie Plaza?
Should we have standards?
we really shouldn't have.
Because it's
any.
not that,
Pretty well
I mean, there's a
covered.
limit because you've got a limit to the number of tenanted spaces.
exactly right, so
I mean, it, like,
I don't see a problem with one of the interior tenant
They have to
I
go.
think there's,
coming to the zoning board to, if there's a sign already there, let me see if I can put it the way I think about it. There's an interior building like Art Craft Camera
Yeah.
where that,
Yep,
and they have a sign on the outside. They probably pay in their lease for that sign. So now that business leaves,
right,
new business comes in.
right.
I don't think they should have to get a variance to put the sign up in the same size that the old one was in.
That's what the amendment would do.
I
Okay,
agree with,
but I don't think that just because they're an inside business who don't have, there's no sign out there now, all of a sudden I want to put a sign up. And I think they have to go through the whole process. In other words, if it's an existing, if it's existing.
I know what you're saying, I don't know how you make that distinction in the code. You either allow signage or you don't,
Well,
and
I
if you
think
don't,
they
then you need a
probably,
variance.
is there any that don't have a sign right now? I think they all,
I thought they
anybody.
pretty much all have a sign on the outside
They
now.
do. What ends up happening because of the way that our code is written, the sign variances, and it's particular to the sign variances go away when the sign itself and the business for which
Right.
the sign was put up
Right.
goes away. So you need a whole new variance and to come in.
before I forget, just as the attorney's office on Route 9 that has the lit up, brightly red lit up sign. I was driving by the other day and it said, I think it was distracted driving is dangerous. It's this bright glowing thing that pulls your eyes off the road to read it, and it's hard to read. I was like, wow,
Well,
that's,
they proved their point, right?
yeah, well, you crash into their building and they got a client.
Yeah.
I was just amazed that was what they put up on there because that sign is a distraction.
Yeah.
That being said, I agree with you as far as that inside versus outside on that building shouldn't be a variance. But I do think that we should have sign standards that are handled internally through the zoning department, that when you come in, you file the application, you show it, and there should be some standards as far as what you can put up there.
Well, we require them to give us, dimensions, and
No, I
most
know,
of the
but
time, they
if-
give us photo sim anyway.
Right, but if what you're saying is the only thing, as long as it's the right size, you can put up whatever you want, that,
But isn't this a freedom of speech matter too? I mean,
Yeah, we don't,
can't-
again, we can't.
dictate speech.
Even with
Yeah, but he's
standards, we're
talking
only going to
about-
talk about
he's
no,
talking
freedom of
colors and
speech,
lighting.
if
Color.
if you have
I
like,
think Stefan's talking about color,
Right.
right now,
I
we
mean,
don't
that-
control.
I mean,
That's-
we can certainly, we don't
Some
have them in place
communities
today.
do.
We never have.
Right.
You're right.
Well, we
No,
discussed
I have
it
no
maybe-
objection to that.
yeah,
It's
I mean, I
just-
think we
years
should
ago.
have some general standards
Frankly,
that
we get
make
some
sure
pretty
that.
garish
What do you do
signs
with all
that
the
come
other
in.
ones, though? If you start
Well,
here?
they,
Well, no, it would be going forward. You're not going to
Yeah.
tell people you're going to have
Right.
to take down the sign that you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on, but going forward, I think there should just be some basic general standards that,
Well, Stefan, one of the standards they tried to push years ago was all the whites in the back and stuff to dull them out, but then you had an issue like you had Chili's, they all want their logos. So, if you get somebody who's got a white logo, then you get a logo issue. They should be all looked at, and the issue is billboard up is, you get somebody like, say, Art Crafts or Joanne Fabrics, now they get 5 different lawyers in there, and all 5 of them want to sign up. Now we have too many signs. There has to come a point where, as he said, not necessarily come to zoning, but has to be a point where Sarah can decide, the sign's replacing a sign, but now you got 6 offices that took over one spot, and all 6 of those lawyers or doctors or dentists all want 6 signs. Then comes a point where it's overkill, and somebody should have to come and say,
Right, some
enough
sort of-
is enough. There's got to be a
some
cutoff.
sort of
The last
general.
paragraph says, attached proposal would allow such inside tenants the right to place signs facing the parking lot without a variance. Well, I would agree, if they're there, if the sign matches a space inside the store now, inside the mall now, that makes sense. But to just allow somebody who doesn't have a sign, or rents one of those pieces in the middle, and now put a sign out without coming for a variance, I think that would be a mistake.
Yeah, and like I said, I'd like to consider just some general standards. And I agree with you where these national companies come in. The one place where I can say there's an example of where everybody follows the rule, even the big chains, is you go to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and Best Buy has a sign that is neutral colors like brown, brown and beige. And because they want to be there, they comply with the local ordinance. Everybody comes in and says that it has to be this way. That's the only way we do it.
Right.
And then when you tell them no, they'll, okay, well, we have options B, C, and D, but we generally don't do those because.
Yeah, but if you look at the standards.
And I'm not saying we got to get rid of the chili pepper on chilies.
Oh.
I just think we want to have very general standards so that you have some rhyme and reason that it's not. It shouldn't just be if it fits the square footage, we're good, leave it alone. It should be, we have just some general standards as far as, and again, I go back to that distracted driving is dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, to me, that's ridiculous because that sign is dangerous because it distracts you driving. And the fact that they put that up on the sign was like, wow, that's interesting that, clearly they understand that part of it, but they don't seem to understand.
All this was brought to the board probably 5 years ago, because Doreen sat on a committee, we had all the standards.
At least 5, I bet it was,
colors,
yes.
all the backgrounds, and every time we brought it to the board, time and time again, it just dropped. I mean, whether it comes back or not, because they told you shouldn't have a white background, you should have neutral backgrounds. Most of them should have gooseneck hanging over top possibly if you can, so you don't illuminate the whole street. All the fluorescent backgrounds was to change, more neutral colors in the back. And every time I came here, before I got off the board last time, it just sort of got dropped. And it was all out there. It was all out there because Doreen said, how many meetings? And that was the whole issue was
was a
colors,
nightmare.
backgrounds. You said the one company may have had white. But we don't want white because we don't want all the glare out there. We want a different color. It was in that ordinance that when you're closed at 9 o'clock, your sign goes off. Route 9 shouldn't look like Route 9 in the middle of the night. There was all these different standards that were all in there. That's still out there.
And
I don't know if
I
Neil
mean,
still got a copy of it.
I'm okay if we want to.
I have all of that, yeah.
I'm okay if we want to reconsider that, but I guess my concern is that rather than have a lot of rules, we have no rules. Maybe something somewhere in between might be good. And like I said, I'm okay if it's just some general basic standards where you say, yeah, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. And I'm not trying to restrict anybody's freedom of speech. It's not, it's more of a matter that again, you go down to Hilton Head, South Carolina, and I use it as an example because it's the only place where I've seen the big box actually follow the local rules and not get away with the big crazy, bright yellow or whatever signs. You have some general standards where, things are reasonable. You're not telling them they can't put the chili up or they can't do this and that, but it's just got to, generally, most things comply to a few basic rules. And that I think at least would be a nice start. I think the sign ordinance that was started to be put together had a lot of really good ideas. If we don't go all the way to that point, I'd at least like to have some sort of general standards.
I can.
Poughkeepsie Plaza
I
was
have all
probably-
of that backup. I mean, we can
Was
we
one
can
of the
take a
better
look at that
plazas.
again.
Poughkeepsie Plaza, all their signs were, at one time, were all uniform. They all had like a
Yeah, they were.
12 by 18 sign all the way across, but after a while, that isn't
Right,
that.
they came in, they did a whole facade redo, the signs are uniform, and as tenants change, everybody seems to want
But,
their own
I
sign.
honestly think the uniform signs looks nice, and it's enough signage for the businesses that are there. When you start to carve, everybody does a different color sign, different design. I don't think that looks as good, and I don't think if you impose some basic standards like that, it would be a business killer. I'm not even saying that we go that far. I just think there should be some general guidelines that.
Well, they were actually working with their tenants at one time. I don't know if they still do, but the main tenants got the top of the street sign out in the road, and the other tenants underneath, they almost rotated because they had so many tenants, they couldn't get them all on the sign, because otherwise, as you said, talk about, distraction. You try to read all 50 stores up there, so they would take them and they rotate some of the smaller ones, so they'd all get a chance to be up there. I don't know if they still do that or not.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, in terms of this, this is really just today. It's only about the Poughkeepsie Plaza.
Only one would-
If you're interested in us bringing it forward, we can print it up and give it to you if you want us
Yeah,
to
I would
continue to work
say,
on it.
I'd like to see it printed up. I mean, I don't want to unduly, I think the people on the inside, that plaza needs help. And
It's only the
not-
inside
We're not
tenants.
making any, it's allowing what's there today and.
Right, and
It's
if
just
any of them
making it a
want to
little
come in
easier.
for larger signage, that lands them in front of the zoning board anyway.
Right.
No, we should make it easier for them, as we said, even with, we're back to the small business earlier. Should be easier for these guys to open and do the right thing without getting
Yes.
carried away. And, Jim shouldn't have to see everybody for every little sign that's coming on. I mean, they
Yeah.
got a full plate, or as it is.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree. All right.
All right,
Great, Neil. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board regarding town issues? Doreen? Someone walk off with our handheld mic, or is it up there?
It's there.
Is it off? Could you just check? Make sure.
That would hurt his rezoning request.
Just make that up, would you, Felicia?
So I'm not sure, I don't believe I saw
Thanks.
an updated ordinance for the, proposed ordinance for the home business on the website, but maybe it was there and I missed it, but, so.
May not have
There's
been.
not
is-
one. I don't
is-
think there is one right now, it just.
No, this is,
Discussion.
right. Yep.
Okay, I just want to, so
Yeah, no,
I'm
I'm
not
just-
sure if
yeah.
it's still, what, the question I'm going to ask, if it's still in there. So
All right.
the second iteration had a letter F in there that said, in addition to parking for a non-resident employee, it said that there would be sufficient off-street parking for customers, and employees said that would be provided. I think that was CF at one point. So is
Yeah.
that still in there?
Should be provided.
That's still-
In addition to parking of
It's in
employees.
D of the
Yeah.
second one.
F.
Yeah.
It's in 2D. Well, it's in F also.
Well-
It's in
Yeah.
F
Also
also.
in the first one, too.
So is it in
Yeah,
for
yeah, it's still in
C?
there in both
Okay,
sections.
all right, because, as you know, my big thing is parking.
Yeah, it
And-
does call for off-street in F.
Okay. Okay, so that was a question about that.
But yep.
Okay, and then about the signs, yeah, Janice, we did a lot of work on that committee, and it never went anywhere. And one of the things, though, that currently I know is that televisions are prohibited in windows, and signs can't be changing more than twice a day.
Right.
And there is, in the Arlington Town Center, several storefronts down from the Juliet, the old Prudential Searles, which is now Berkshire Hathaway Realty. Well, they have what looks like a TV panel in the window, and it is changing. And I know an order to remedy was issued, but I guess for a flashing sign displayed in the window, and then there was another one for a television in the window. But I guess they're challenging it that it's not really a television. So see, now you get into these sort of things where,
Yeah.
there's.
Yeah, it's an LED. It's an interactive LED that you can actually
Touch.
touch it, and it'll bring different things up for you, so.
So, the intent
It's a
was
gray
to
area.
not have these sort of things in the window, but then it seems like there's always, a way around it
Yeah.
somehow. So that's being challenged. So, there's always creative ways around it, it seems. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the library on Boardman Road. Because I file Freedom of Information requests and monitor inspections that go on in the town. I noticed that for several months I was seeing a lot of work being done, and I wasn't seeing it showing up in the inspection reports that Morris Associates does for the town. So I contacted Mr. Wilson and said, I've been watching this construction activity for months now and don't see any inspections. And Neil had replied that it was his understanding that they were just starting to bring equipment on site in anticipation of starting construction. Well, for months, like I said, they did quite a bit of work on that site. There was no erosion and sediment control. Anyway, so then, it was my opinion that a stop work order was necessary. Anyway, a site visit was made and, verified what I saw, that for months they had been doing work and there was no erosion and sediment control. They hadn't had their pre-construction meeting. Clearly states on the site plan that prior to commencement of any site work, the applicant's contractor and consulting engineer shall schedule a field meeting with engineering and planning to discuss phasing of the work, erosion control, blah, blah, blah. They didn't do any of that. So I really have a problem with my tax dollars being used to violate the law. So, I hope that, my library taxes, the tax levy went up 14.8% for 2014, and part of that was because of the new library. So I find it disturbing that the library is using taxpayer dollars to violate the law. So, and I know that that since then, pre-construction meeting it's not really pre-construction now, but a meeting was held, and it was my understanding, I talked to the supervisor about it, that the library has been informed of what they need to do.
Yep.
But, Chasen's the engineering company, and, this is nothing new. It's stuff that goes on all the time in the town. They work in the town, and, that really shouldn't have been allowed to happen. So, and there's various parts of the town's application that says, you have to have this pre-construction visit. So I find that very, very disconcerting that they would go ahead and do that. And when you talk about escrow accounts and stuff like that, I mean, it is so that the town can come out and do inspections and make sure everything's being done the way it's supposed to, and they obviously decided not to do that. So, and then the last thing, which I had asked the supervisor, and he'll check on that for me, is the Poughkeepsie Day School. I had come to you last year where I said that they exceeded the work limits of disturbance and went outside of the area of disturbance, and we ended up with a standing water on the corner of like Boardman and Spackenkill Roads there. And so what they did is then they went back in and they put, and that was a vegetated area. So now they went back in, and you can see there's big, it's not gravel, it's bigger pieces of rock that they've put in there. But they were supposed to be at, they had claimed that they were supposed to be replanting existing shrubs. Well, there was no replanting done, so now there's just this flat area with all the stone left in the middle. So my thing is, even if they're not going to be replanting shrubs, there should be some sort of revegetation in there. And, if there's a problem with ponding water by taking away the vegetation, that's not going to help the situation. So, I'd like to see that resolved, because we really don't need more mosquitoes and West Nile and all that good stuff. So, and again, that's also Chasen Engineering, and like I said, these people really should know better, and but that doesn't seem to be the case. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Noreen. Anybody else? Marlene? Sure. Come on up.
Does it have to do with the Page family and who's who?
I just want to explain when you guys all laughed when I questioned John Page Jr. And my reason for that is I, like Mr. Conti, know that piece of property. And in the back, I couldn't hear, I thought it was Page, but I wasn't sure.
Oh.
And I figured...
Well, see, that's what you get for sitting in the back row.
You're right. I'm going to have to move to the front row.
That's right.
But anyway, I just believe that, it's a tough piece of property, and I believe it is one of the Pages that, have businesses in the area, and they've done great jobs, and we've seen what they've done with the Poughkeepsie Journal building. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've done magnificent things. So I believe that this piece of property here, if it's one of their sons or one of them, can take that piece of property and make it into really nice apartments, and I think we need those in the area.
Okay.
So that's why I'm here to explain why I asked
we're glad
that.
you're here,
Now that
Marlene.
we clarified the family tree, we're much better.
And you
positioned
guys, I
figure
want to
that
say,
out.
I've really been on a roll tonight. I mean, your massage parlors, your tattaoo parlors,
Try
and
to
all these
add a-
other
We
things.
try to keep it interesting.
That's right.
Ratings up.
Yeah, the ratings will be up tonight.
Thanks, Marlene. Anybody else? All right, I just wanted to, before I go to committee reports, I should have said this at the beginning of the meeting, we are having trouble with our phone system at Town Hall. If you've tried to call Paytech Windstream, which handles our service, I don't know what their issue is, but it's a real problem, very irritating. We're waiting for AT&T to come out. I hope that happens really soon, but anybody who's trying to contact Town Hall today would know they weren't able to get through. We don't have any
And
phone
Portland
service.
yesterday.
Well, yesterday afternoon as well, so.
They get a busy signal.
What's the name of the company?
Paytech Windstream.
Paytech?
Paytech Windstream, yes, sir. Yep. All right.
And they haven't responded.
Well, they haven't fixed the phones. They haven't fixed the phones, let's put it that way.
They call to tell them there's a problem.
I mean, all right. Committee reports. Finance.
Nothing to report.
Fire advisory.
Nope, we're having a meeting next week.
All right. Government ops.
Nothing to report.
Land use and planning.
Nothing to report.
Personnel. Bill.
Nothing.
Personnel member here.
I don't think it's a meeting.
All right, well,
I don't think.
Rec,
There'll be a Cal Ripken parade Saturday, 9 o'clock, starting at Kinry School, opening day, and as Stepan said last week, it's usually a good time. And then after that, everybody goes on to the different fields, and it's usually a pretty good day for baseball. So whoever's available, has nothing better to do, Doreen, come on out.
all the drive?
Yep,
Okay. Senior citizens,
nothing to report.
technology and equipment,
Nothing to report.
and infrastructure.
We held a meeting, it's first one in a while, and there was quite a discussion. I've decided I don't want to be on that committee anymore. I don't know how I got talked into being on that committee. Anyhow, we went through, which was a hot topic, the roads, and the fact that back in, they estimate 2000 to 2002, we passed a bond, multiple millions of dollars, and paved and fixed a bunch of roads in town, which are now at their 14-year and at the end of their lives, and there's no money. So I'm reporting to the board that the committee said there's no money to fix the roads. And I can understand, I don't know that much about paving roads, but we only have so many dollars. I think it's we try and do one road per ward.
Per ward, per year, yeah.
And when I mentioned that at the meeting, I was told that means that we'll pave one road, the same road, every 60 years. So I don't know where this is going to go. I've asked them to now come in with specific plans, and I'll report back to you as we do that.
All right. That does it. Anything else from the board?
Yeah, Todd, I just got to bring up that, you brought up a few weeks ago about the Central Hudson scam. You get the phone call, please contact us right away, give us your phone, your credit card number, and pay your bill, or 45 minutes, they're going to disconnect your electric. And actually, I got contacted yesterday and called back in Central Hudson, said they had numerous calls yesterday, so they're still very active and out there. And they said as of noon yesterday, they had like 12 or 15 people that had gotten hit yesterday alone.
So if you get a phone call, presumably from Central Hudson, saying they want
They're going to cut
credit
you off.
card numbers, if
We should not pay our Central Hudson bill.
do not respond to those type of phone calls. No. So, thank you for that.
I just want to say something. I can't even think what night it was, but
Senior moment?
yeah. Well, the other night over the
Hang
weekend,
on, he'll come up with something.
over the weekend, I was tucking my kids in the bed and about to go to sleep, and I smelled fumes in the house. When I went downstairs to take a look, it got worse. So my wife and the kids went out, got my cats out of the house, and when I went down in the basement, there was a strong odor and fumes coming out, and I shut off the furnace and hot water heater. The CO2, carbon monoxide detectors were going off, the fire alarms were going off, rang through the fire company. The Arlington Fire Company responded very quickly, very professionally, and I go back to the previous. For whatever reason, I've had a few incidents at my house where the fire company comes out, but each time I am always impressed in that when everyone is running out of the building, they're going in, they have their monitors and their meters and their masks on, and I just want to thank them for their professionalism, their quick response, making me feel comfortable to live in this community. And I go back to the fact that I don't know what the budget should be or shouldn't be. I just know that they should be well-trained, well-equipped. And when you have a problem with your family and you're worried about survivability, these guys are there. And so thank you again 1,000 times over. I was very impressed with the people that came out, per usual. And myself, my family are very appreciative, so.
Anything else?
That's it. Sorry.
All right. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Town Board adjourns at 40 p.m.